Welcome to the Ripple of Change podcast, searching for our quadruple aim, where we highlight, celebrate, and extol other humans doing amazing things in healthcare and beyond. I'm your host, Dr. Otten. Like to cause trouble, so I guess we'll just continue on with that theme today. We have two other physicians joining us, both amazing human beings. Dr. Jill Wener, who is joining us today to talk about tapping, which I will freely admit I am new to this subject, so I am excited to learn more today, and we'll give Jill an opportunity to introduce herself a little bit more, as well as Dr. Sapna Shah-Haque, who has a podcast as well. So we've got three podcasters today. So I'm not going to read CVs because I don't know. So I'm going to have you both say a little bit about yourselves. Tell us what you're up to, how you're causing good trouble these days. And Jill, since you're our guest, why don't we start with you, and then Sapna will have you follow on right after.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's lovely to be here. I am so Sapna, I know you're a practicing internist. I am a no longer practicing internist. I was a hospitalist in Chicago and transitioned out of clinical medicine very unintentionally in 2015. Didn't know I was actually leaving medicine when I left my job to move overseas for a while. But I initially was a meditation teacher and tried to, think that I wasn't a doctor anymore because I had decided not to go back to healthcare, and I was teaching meditation. And then I quickly realized you can take the girl out of healthcare, but you can't take the healthcare out of the girl. So I got into the more kind of, maybe the physician wellness space found me, and did a lot of work with meditation there, and then was introduced to what we'll be talking about today, which is called tapping or EFT in 2017, and then became a practitioner of that in 2019. And around that time also started doing the anti-racism, anti-oppression work that I do as well.
Well, that's fantastic. And see, I told both of you I was going to screw up the intro, and I completely did. It seems to be that's my theme, that I mess it up right from the beginning, and then I get comfortable, and I didn't even say the title of the episode. So I'm going to add that here and then put it over to Sapna, because I thought that we had a really good title: EBM, EFT, tapping. Oh my! And so completely out of order, but what the heck? It's our show, so we can do whatever we want, right? That's a homage to the Wizard of Oz. Sapna, it's so great to have you here today too. I cherished our first conversation, so I'm excited to see where this goes today. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself as well?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I echo that sentiment. I'm actually a practicing internist, and I kind of got into this space of physician burnout and moral injury due to the fact of going through it twice myself, but not really having the verbiage to describe that until after I lost my best friend, who was also a physician, to suicide in her office in 2019. And what really brought me around to that was, what in the world, why? Being a physician, as difficult as it is to me, it's a privilege to be able to treat people, especially at their most vulnerable points. Having said that, I didn't realize that the statistics of physician suicide, and that further just expedited my reading about physician burnout and moral injury. And from that frustration and understanding that it's a shared experience, it wasn't just mine, I started the podcast on the side, in addition to working, having a young family. But it's just amazing to me how none of this was really talked about until I think the pandemic brought everything to the forefront.
Yeah, and I think it's positive that it is being talked about, because we need to reverse this trend of losing a physician a day in the United States, give or take. That's just a horrendous statistic. And I think these alternative ways of dealing with stress and improving and boosting our resilience are fantastic. As I said, I am completely naive when it comes to the concept of tapping. So I am excited to learn more about this, and am fully expecting to be poking myself in different places and hopefully improving things. So no pressure, Jill, no pressure.
No pressure at all. Sapna, I'm really sorry about your loss. That's really tragic. I wasn't, that really hit. So thank you for sharing your story and for doing the work you do.
Well, thank you. It's just, it's sad that we have to have these conversations.
Yeah.
If this were any other profession, when something happens with airlines, we say how it makes the national news because everybody's affected by that. But also what we don't realize is that if the physicians are unwell, that affects everything. That affects access to healthcare, that affects the quality of healthcare that's being given. And this is not just for physicians, but I think anybody within that space, nurses, C-suite included. And it's just something that we need to talk about and legitimately fix. So it's not to stigmatize or demonize the physician because, damn, we're really pretty darn resilient with everything we've gone through.
For sure. And I think this speaks to some of the initiatives that, and I know you're both aware of it to a certain extent, that Medicine Forward's been working on to really start to break down some of these barriers to treatment, et cetera. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but obviously I'm super excited about Medicine Forward being a part of it. And I can't help myself to be excited about the project Prescribe Hope, where we're trying to get safe haven initiatives and in really all 50 states. To me, that's an amazing endeavor. And I'm thrilled about it. And Sapna, I again, my condolences to you as well. I having had an unfortunate similar scenario, maybe not to the same extent. I lost my partner, and these stories are everywhere. I think if you talk to physicians, almost all of us know somebody who has died by suicide, and it's unbelievable. It's almost unfathomable of how common it is. So anyways, but Jill, I would love, we don't want to, we definitely want to focus on the resiliency and helping out those that are practicing, including myself, who in 3 days will be going back to a part-time DPC role to take care of some ER physicians. So a very unique role. They didn't even have the algorithm to onboard because I'll be the only family physician in the group. So that was kind of cool. But why don't you give us maybe a little bit of background of how you got involved with tapping and how it works and what it does, and let's go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before I get into it, I just want to kind of honor that the healthcare system is broken and the medical training that we go through is traumatizing in many different ways. And we project that trauma onto our patients. They project their trauma onto us. And it's like a whole system that is very harmful. And, and we exist in that space right now. That's where we are. And so as amazing people like you all are doing work to bring attention to all of this and working to fix the system, which desperately needs to be fixed. I tend to think of tapping and meditation. If you think about like you're drowning and someone has a life raft, like a, whatever it's called that they throw at you, one of the little buoy things. And like, maybe you're in a lake or something and it's flooding because the dam is broken. And if we're like, well, I don't want to take the life raft because the dam is broken and we need to fix the dam and that's why I'm drowning, we're going to take the life raft. So there are tools that can help us, not because we should be more resilient or because, like you were saying, Sapna, I mean, there's so much pressure already being put, so much perfectionism already being internalized by healthcare professionals. And so I think it's important to kind of just name and put out there that these tools aren't going to fix the system. These tools aren't designed to make anyone feel like they should be doing them if they don't want to do them. And they can be really, really helpful, and they have, some good evidence behind them. So I want to name that. And I don't know if y'all have any comments around that, because I feel like I get some pushback sometimes from people in healthcare, like, you're just this is just another thing on our plate to take up more of our time, particularly workplace wellness initiatives.
Ooh, I'll jump in on that one. Because I think it's a balance of that self-care, which is so important. And frankly, when I was struggling, I wasn't doing a good job with it. And that was on me. I was trying it, but I had put too much on my plate. And when I went through my headache bouts and stuff, and I don't know if this mechanism or modality would have worked for me. I don't know, but heck, I would have loved to have tried it. And I don't think it can be a substitute for, like you said, fixing the system. We need those individuals out there who are wanting to, quote unquote, boil the ocean, as I joke, which I'm definitely one of those individuals that wants to boil the ocean without a doubt. But at the same time, I think we need tools that we can use from an individual basis to, as you say, stay afloat and not drowned and not go down that catastrophic path that we started off talking about. Sapna, I don't know if you wanted to piggyback on that at all.
100%. I'm going to echo what you've shared. It's not to say that it's the physician's fault or anybody's fault, but the thing is that the healthcare system's not going to change overnight. So how do we keep practicing if that's what we choose? How do we keep practicing in a stressful environment? I mean, to say that it's not stressful is, I'd like to know that person's secret. But, I'm responsible for my health at the end of the day. I'm responsible for me. So if this is a tool that will help me get through a day well, and so that way I can come home and not be completely drained and be happy to see my family, then I'm all for it. I mean, it's not, sure as heck, it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for y'all's comments. You hear my Southern coming out. I'm in Atlanta. I just finished I do a train the trainer program that is about to get accredited for CME, which is really exciting. And I just finished it yesterday, the most current one. And one of the people taking it was a resident physician, and she had messaged me, I'm going to be late because my mom had an accident. I have to take her to the hospital. She's fine, but I still need to go take care of it. And she came back to the training with like an hour and 15 minutes left out of the 4 hours. And she was like, I'm here, I'm okay. And I was, we like took a moment to situate her. And then they broke out into their groups, and she had a moment to process, because they're learning how to teach each other tapping. And she had a moment to actually process what was happening. And she shared, like, I'm so glad that I had this chance to actually process what I was feeling. Because what had happened is she's like, I have to go into doctor mode. I have to take care of my mom. I have to do this thing. I have to do that. And then I have to come back and do this training that I signed up for. And I have to be ready to learn and put all my emotions away. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us, is we put our emotions away after we run a code. I mean, even if healthcare gets perfectly fixed, we're still telling patients they have cancer. We're still running codes. We're still dealing with the things that we deal with. And that has an impact on our nervous system. That has an impact on our well-being. And so, to get to your question 10 minutes later of how I first learned about tapping, I first heard about it at I was teaching meditation at a conference for women physicians. And their other main speakers were a psychiatrist and a psychologist who were from somewhere in Colorado, I think, who did EFT tapping. So it's the emotional freedom technique, as its kind of scientific name, with their patients at the VA, who were helping their patients with post-traumatic stress diagnoses, actually using this as a technique. And they taught us about a few other things, similar types of techniques. So that was when I first heard about it. And I thought it sounded really cool, but I was, at the time, I'm a meditation teacher. I have it all figured out. That was kind of the Kool-Aid that we were given to drink. And for my own burnout, just by the way, which happened in 2011, meditation was what I needed. And for some people, it might be all they need, but many people it's not, and most people it's not. So that was kind of my journey. I just needed to stop crying every day at 10 a.m. I needed to make it at least through 2 or 3 before I cried. So I was all in my meditation world. And then a lot of personal stuff happened to me. And I looked around at my meditation community, and they were all falling apart and I was falling apart. And I was like, okay, well, this is scary because this is supposed to have fixed me. I'm supposed to be this perfect individual now. And so the pressure of all that was a lot. And there was a lot of like, well, how can I tell people that I'm struggling because I'm a meditation teacher? And then it means that what I'm teaching isn't valid. And what I quickly learned was, well, there's not like one technique that's going to fix us, and we don't need to be fixed. We're all perfectly imperfect as we are. These are tools that can help us. So Western medicine does a lot, and there's some stuff that it doesn't do. So then there's other things that can help. And so meditation does a lot. And then I met a woman who was a tapping practitioner, and I said, she said, let me just tap with you for an hour. Let me just give me one session. And I felt like myself for the first time in months after tapping with her. So it went from this thing where I was like, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll be trained to be a practitioner, to I'm a human being and I'm suffering. And this has helped me connect back into myself in such a powerful way so quickly. So I worked with her for a couple years as a human who had problems, and then decided to become a tapping practitioner. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I guess maybe I'll stop there if there's other questions you had, or I can go into what it is.
Sapna and I are both looking at each other. Who's going to say something? Sapna, go ahead. It looks like you had a question. I'll be quiet.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it done, or I don't know anything about it. So I'm as curious as Todd is.
We're both like scooting up on our
I'm like,
yeah, like let's just jump into it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Time. Maybe by the end, I'll talk about what it is. Okay, so I'll just get into what it is. So basically, it is a stress reduction technique. It is evidence-based, and it basically involves tapping on different parts of the face and chest, which correspond to a lot of the same places used in acupuncture, which are called meridians, or like, I guess energy centers is another way to think of them, but I call them tapping points because that's how we call them in tapping. And we actually say out loud the thing that's bothering us. Like, revolutionary concept. We don't hide our feelings away. We don't shove them to the side. We actually say out loud what is bothering us in that moment, whether it's anxiety or shame or fear or sadness or anything. And it can be used in a million different ways. It can be used for intense emotions. It can be used to process grief or, medical illness. I have some clients who have gone through cancer and chemotherapy. It can be used to actually treat trauma. It can be used for phobia. So a lot of different applications of it. But the underlying mechanism is we're tapping on these points on the face and chest, and we're saying out loud the things that usually we are told that we're not supposed to say out loud. And that actually, it activates this parasympathetic nervous system. So that's one of the ways that it works. So you see people when they're tapping, they may sigh or they may yawn, because that's what happens when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes stomach gurgling. And it also sends calming signals to the stress center of our brain, the hippocampus and amygdala, and shifts the way that they're perceiving what is stressing us or distressing us in the moment. And it tells that part of the brain that we're safe. And so it kind of rewires the way that our brain is processing stress. So we say out loud the thing that's bothering us over and over again. And rather than that making it worse, because a lot of people say, wait, aren't we supposed to think positive? And aren't we supposed to say positive things and not attract negativity into our life? This is a way to sit with and then maybe more recently, people are saying, oh, no, sit with your negative emotions, sit with the discomfort. And no one tells us how to do that, because it's really hard to do that. So this is kind of like a structured way to actually acknowledge what we're feeling and process it in a healthy way. And then we come out of it feeling kind of many times transformed. And we're able to kind of peel back all those layers of stress that are impacting us and have these really great aha moments of sometimes gratitude will come up, or sometimes hope, or just a resolution or a decrease in the intensity of what we're feeling. And it's not necessarily meant to make all the bad feelings go away, but it can help us regulate our nervous system so that we can deal with what just happened. We can deal with the fact that we just had to take our mom to the hospital, or that we just ran a code, or that we had a bad outcome of some sort, or had to give a difficult news. we can tap on that and get ourselves regulated enough to then go out and do the rest of our day and not end up completely drained and exhausted at the end of the day. So that is kind of what tapping is. And it looks a little funny when people first see it. You're tapping on points on your face and you're saying out loud, like if I was anxious about something, let's say I'm anxious about being on the podcast. I'm anxious about being on the podcast, all this anxiety. I'm feeling so anxious, all this anxiety. What if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? What if they laugh at me? I don't think you would laugh at me, but we literally just do that and we go through the tapping points, and that on its own very, very quickly and very easily can be extraordinarily impactful.
So right before I do my intro, so I don't screw it up, I should be doing this. Is potentially an opportunity, is what I'm hearing. I actually, this is fascinating because I mean, up until we had met recently, Jill, I honestly had never heard of this, and I've got a few questions as to utility, I suppose.
Yeah.
The first one, when I was going through, and this is really related to my personal medical history, when I was going through cluster headaches, I would have tried just about anything to try and get some relief. I mean, I was literally sitting between seeing patients with an oxygen mask on my face because nothing else would work. And it would, I'm sure my MA would have thought it would have been hilarious if I would have been walking around tapping on my forehead. Is there utility in a circumstance like that? Would it help potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't guarantee anything because we can't guarantee anything, but it can be used for pain. I didn't mention that, but it can be used for acute pain and it can be used for chronic pain. Stress and pain are very interesting because as doctors, as there's something you said earlier, Sapna, I can't remember what, but it's like we're given all these messages early on when we're not okay, and we tend to ignore them. Take a break, slow down, whatever it is that we need to, we ignore them until the point where our body's like, all right, well, I gotta get louder. And so what does it do? It gives us headaches. It gives us back pain. It gives us, whatever stress related, sometimes actual like full on diseases, so that we then pay attention. Because in our society, I feel like physical pain is the only thing that's really like validated. It's the only thing that is like, okay, well, if I'm having that, then it's okay for me to stop and care for myself. But I'm hearing in your case, Todd, even then you were just like using oxygen between patients. So our bodies have a really beautiful way, and sometimes very painful way, of letting us know when we've really, really taken it too far and we need to care for ourselves. So stress can cause pain. Stress can make pain worse, and pain can cause stress. So we have all of those things in there. And I think there's a lot of, in our healthcare system, if you have a stress-related health issue, for people listening, I'm air quoting, then that somehow means that you're faking it, or you're like whining, or that it's not a real issue. And I think the beauty of some of the techniques like tapping and other things is that it can help. It can help an acute headache in the moment. It can help the emotional distress that comes around the headache that may actually make the headaches worse. There's so many different ways that it can work. You can tap on your emotions about your pain. You can tap on the physical pain itself. The possibilities are very endless with it. And it can be very effective. If you broke your arm, could it decrease your pain and the emotional intensity around that? Yes. Is it going to make your pain go away? I'd say probably not. I wouldn't say that tapping cures cancer. I'm not going to say, there may be people who say stuff like that. I'm not going to say that, but it can definitely bring a lot of improvement.
So like with tapping, is it something that you have to do regularly, or how often and for how long?
Yeah.
Like if I'm in if I'm in clinic and I just am overwhelmed, how long would it take for me to like go back to my office and tap?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And that's like one of the 80 billion things I love about tapping, because meditation that I teach is 20 minutes twice a day. And if you don't meditate, you don't get the benefits. Tapping is more like spot cleaning. So you do it as needed, PRN. So like you can tap regularly. There's ways to tap regularly. I've never really done that. So if I'm really mad about something or sad about something or frustrated, then I'll tap. And it can be 5 minutes. It can be maybe even less than 5 minutes. We're not going to solve our deepest traumas in 5 minutes. That takes much deeper work in multiple sessions. But if we're very upset about a thing, very, overwhelmed or dysregulated about a thing, we can take 5 minutes, go to the bathroom, go to our office, go into a supply closet or whatever, and tap and feel much better right away. And you could do it once a year. You could do it once a month. You could do it twice a day, whatever it is. You could do it in between every patient. You don't have to have like a backlog, a whole, like you don't have to have experience doing it in order for it to work. It can work right away. I'd say the barriers to it are kind of openness. And also it's just sometimes for people at the beginning, a little awkward just because you're like, what am I doing? I'm tapping on my face and then I'm saying things out loud. So just once but it's usually done, at least initially, it's done call and response. So you can tap on your own, absolutely. And also it can be done like with a guided tapping recording or with a live person. So that kind of takes the guesswork out of it and you just kind of mirror what they're doing. And if you wanted to do a quick tapping sequence first thing, and before your podcast or in between patients, you can do it on your own very quickly and learn to do that very easily. You don't have to get a whole degree in order to be able to do that.
This is
So I
so.
know,
I'm sorry. Go
sorry.
ahead, Sapna. No. Go
no,
ahead,
go
Sapna.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say this is so cool. I'm thinking of so many opportunities related to something like this, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do the podcast and talk about different things that people are doing and get some of these things out there. I mean, how many of our colleagues might benefit from it? How many patients might benefit from trying something like this? Not everything works for everybody, but if it helps hundreds or thousands of people as a result, how cool is that, right? I mean, I would have been game when I was struggling not only with the headaches but also going through burnout. I mean, my goodness, I don't know about you, Sapna, but I see utility for this for sure.
Oh, 100%. That's why I'm asking these things is like, okay, how does that fit into a traditionally busy day? But not only that, I mean, it's amazing that there are tools that, again, kind of going back to the fact that you said that these tapping spots mirror meridians or spots for acupuncture. I mean, we're seeing more and more research that shows that that's pretty effective. Of course, we know it's effective just by it's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really cool. I know that when I was at the VA, they were introducing something called battlefield acupuncture, utilizing the points on the ears, and there were some really good results that we saw. Going back to the fact that even though it might appear different, and wow, we didn't learn that in med school. I mean, don't discount it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole world of stuff that we didn't learn in med school, as it turns out, that can be very helpful. And I think I was talking about this yesterday in my training. I think that a lot of times we feel powerless as physicians to help our patients or ourselves through these things that are kind of vague. Like, I don't know what to do with the IBS or the fibromyalgia or the pain that happens and there's all the scans are negative and the labs are normal. I don't know what to do. And then we kind of resent it because we don't know how to fix it. And so there are so many really great techniques out there that can do it. And I mean, this one has been shown in one study. They compared it to an hour of tapping versus an hour of therapy, conventional therapy versus an hour of nothing, of placebo, and it decreased cortisol by 24% compared to both. So, and there's a ton of data. Just make sure for anyone listening, you look it up under emotional freedom technique because it won't be under tapping. But there's a ton of data on how it works. And during, and as you're saying, it's like, yes, the data is cool, but if it's working, that's what's important for a lot of this stuff. And during COVID, Dr. Ni Cheng Liang, I don't know if either of y'all know her, but she put together a group called the Mindful Healthcare Collective. And there were 9 of us physicians who did coaching and meditation and different stuff. And I did free tapping sessions for all comers mostly healthcare professionals during COVID. And people would come on, just, you remember those early days? I mean, they were gutting, and just disorienting and so much. And people would come on, and 10 or 15 minutes of tapping feel so much better, feel so much more regulated, smiling, and feeling capable of doing what they needed to do, or speaking up for themselves if they needed to speak up for themselves. So I saw it during COVID. Really was when, I mean, I became a practitioner in 2019, and COVID happened early 2020. So I had been a practitioner, but it almost felt like my superpower, where I could hold this space for people and help them to feel better so quickly, in a time where everything seemed to be making us feel worse. And so it was really such an honor to be able to help people through that experience in that way, because I was already out of medicine, so I probably would have caused more harm than good if I had gone back in. But so yeah, it's really amazing. And most people hadn't ever done it before. Most people were new to it. And just like me with meditation, which I didn't tell, I was the most burnt, like the most type A, linear, anxious, non-spiritual, non-questioning doctor type out there, until I like fell apart, and like my heart cracked open, and then I was open to something like meditation, because I never would have done that before. So I think sometimes it doesn't have to take that, but I think when we get to a point where we are feeling so helpless, we may be open to things like this a little bit more than we would have been.
So my question is, it took me to be in my late 30s, early 40s to really start to label my emotions, like what I'm feeling and what's triggering me.
Mm.
And so I can see where tapping would be helpful when I know what I'm feeling. But what about, for example, our colleagues that are in the hospitals, the hospitalists, or the ER, that they don't necessarily have time, but they want to try this out. Not time, but they don't really know what's triggering them, or necessarily how to label what they're feeling.
Yeah.
But they want something like, I don't feel like myself, and I just need to try this. If they're supposed to be saying what they're feeling or what is causing this, and it's kind of unknown, what do you do in that aspect?
It's such a good question, Sapna. And what you do is you tap on, you always start off with a setup statement. You tap on the side of your hand, and you say something like I would have said in this example before, even though I'm anxious about going on the podcast because I'm afraid they'll laugh at me. So what you can do is say, even though I'm like all messed up inside and I don't know what I'm feeling, I just know that I'm not okay. I love and you say something like, I love and accept myself, which is the wooest part of all of it. Or I accept myself as I am, or something like that. And you start there. And then you would tap through the points of, I don't know, I'm just not okay. I know that something isn't right. I'm exhausted. I'm reactive. I'm, snapping at people, and I don't know what's wrong. And then that can kind of slowly start to break people's walls down a little bit and connect in better. One of the things we do in tapping is we connect in with where we feel our emotion in our body. And when I first did tapping with my tapping practitioner, she's like, where do you feel that emotion in your body? And I was like, huh? Like, what do you mean feel my emotion in my body? Like, I am sad. I just am sad. I had no idea that sadness would connect into my body somewhere, that I could use my body as a cue to get a sense. So you don't have to know how to do that in order to be able to tap. So there's, we can tap on being resistant. And, even though I'm feeling resistant to this, I kind of want to try it, but I'm feeling resistant. And then you go from there. So it's so flexible and adaptable, and you can kind of make it fit whatever it is that you need.
Well, and to piggyback on that, and I'll say this in jest a little bit. I mean, if you're not knowing where to express your frustrations, perhaps just express it towards like the EMR or the EHR. That would probably suffice, right? I'm just kidding. Kind of.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure all my problems are related to the EMR. And
that's right.
EMR is fault for everything. I love it.
Can we go back to paper charting?
Yeah,
just kidding. Well, why don't we do a Ripple challenge question here? and I had a couple written down, and I was debating which direction to go, but I think I know where I want to take this. And then how about after that, we'll give an opportunity for both of you to impart maybe one more thought, and also how people can find you and a little bit more information about your podcast and that kind of thing. There's no rules to answering this, so you can answer it however you like. Rainbows or unicorns? Jill,
Rainbows.
any particular reason?
I feel like it's much easier to find rainbows and get joy out of rainbows. I have yet to find an actual unicorn.
Fair enough.
I wanna-
Sapna?
Can I combine the answers and say a rainbow unicorn?
Yes, and I keep wanting to steal people's answers, darn it. But tell us
Steal
more.
that one.
Tell us more. Any particular reason there?
My daughter loves both of them, and the unicorn horned headband that she wears has a rainbow unicorn horn. So she's my grounding. She's my grounder. I mean, she grounds me when I'm having trouble. So it's crazy.
That is beautiful. And the more I talk about, I was going to say unicorns, because the more I talk to our colleagues around the country, I feel like, and this term can be, taken in a bunch of different directions. There are a lot of good people out there. And I think there are a lot of quote unquote unicorns out there that are wanting to do good things and make a difference, including the two of you on this podcast today. And so I was going to go with, unicorns. Of course, my daughter's trying to get in the room here, so it is what it is. And then I also think of my nurse practitioners. When I came back from a vacation, they had a inflated unicorn that had the rainbow over my desk, and it just makes me smile and laugh. So this has been such a fun conversation, and I have learned, Jill, I gotta say, I've learned a lot about this technique that I absolutely, as I said before, was clueless on. And I hope that many people hear this and entertain trying it, especially if the modalities they've used in the past haven't worked for them. So with that, I'd love to hear one more imparting thought from both of you. And definitely please tell us how people can find you, where your website is, podcast, etc. So Jill, if you want to go first.
Sorry, I muted myself to be a good co-podcaster, and then I forgot to unmute myself. Yes, so my website is jillwener.com, WENER.com. And if you go to jillwener.com/learn more, there's like a little video about tapping and a chance to actually get a resource that'll teach you how to make your own tapping sequence. So that jillwener.com/learn more, go there and you'll get a resource that can help you get started with this. And my final thought, I got that out of order from the way you asked, is ask for help, and you're not alone, and you don't have to know all the answers, and it's okay to not be okay. And there are people in a million different ways and in a million different places who can support you.
That is beautiful and well said, and I completely agree with you, including I'm going to speak for all three of us. If you're struggling, please reach out to one of us and we'll do our best to point you in the right direction or try and get you the help that you need. Sapna, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I really wanted to comment on Jill's with tapping. I love and accept myself. That's a huge thing, because that is opening yourself up to self-compassion and self-love. And I think that we forget how to do that. We're willing and able to show complete strangers the compassion that we need to show ourselves. So don't underestimate or don't forsake that.
Amazing. And please tell everybody how they can find you.
Absolutely. You can go to theworthyphysician.com, and there you can scroll and see the latest podcast episodes, free resources, and the weekly blog.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I always forget to to do this. So here, if you want a copy of Ripple of Change, you can go to ourquadrupleaim.com.